Hey everyone, welcome back to Rick's 1/35th scale models. My name is Rick. Today I'm going to be talking about a model I did recently, and that is Werk's M48 bridging unit in a West German era version. Now, originally this was a model made by Dragon that came out in the American version, but Werk took it and modified it, did a bunch of different sprue sheet add-ons and different features to make it the West German version, and it is an outstanding model. Their instructions were much better than the Dragon's version. It was a lot clearer. It's got a lot of detail. I was actually quite impressed with Dragon's base model and the quality they had within it, but Werk, as usual, took it to the next level, and like I said, outstanding. What I did is I built the model. A lot of other people have done videos on that, so I didn't really see the need to go through all those different details. I did spend a little bit of time modifying the bridge section, which no one Dragon's kit was a one-sided bridge, not designed to actually accurately. The sizes are correct, but it only is a one side, where in reality both sections are identical, where this one wasn't, so I fixed that. The other thing I did is I made it where you can actually come on and off the bridge vehicle, and that it wasn't designed, it was designed to be glued on. Not a lot of modifications, just the mounting points right on the ends, and then there's a plate that it sits on the bridge that the vehicle actually butts up into, and it locks it in, and then the pins expand outward and grab it. Then they connect some hoses from the underside, hydraulic lines, and then they pick it up. The neat thing about this vehicle was it was on an M48 model. Now, what at that era it did is it tilted up. Now, this was a bad thing because as it popped up in the air, anyone with any kind of ground surveillance radar or any visually, they could see it from quite a distance because it's a big bridge. So that's why in the Leopard 1 and the Leopard 2 versions, it actually slides outward. That way it doesn't silhouette itself as much, and it can stay a little bit more concealed. But let's dive into the model and take a look at what we did. So the first thing I start with is doing multiple different shades of priming. Now I'm using a brown, a gray, and a black, and all of these are Mr. Hobby. Now the idea here is for the underside of the bridge, I want to use the brown. Now that's to show some, dust and rust and all that. And so I'm using this as kind of the primer. That way, if any of the areas that I missed during the painting process will have that effect, and it's not really going to be seen that much, if any. So I want to do that. Now, for the rest of the bridge and the vehicle itself, I'm using the light gray. The idea here is to cover everything, get a good, nice, solid coat, which I'm going about here. It is a lot of model, so it will take quite a bit of primer, but I do like this product. It does stick. Then flipping over to the tank itself, priming that. Now, one of the things you've noticed here is you can see where I put the green product that's for masking on where the road wheels are going to attach that, so that I could glue them. The next stage here is doing kind of a highlight of black to create that multifaceted two-tone look. So I'm hitting all the points that I want to be darker, panel lines, different high points, things like that. This is just a process of going through. There's no real science behind it other than just going about it and prepping it. The next thing I'm doing is I wanted to get a little bit of more of a two-tone look, because I'm taking a nice cream paint and covering different areas that I want highlighted as a lot lighter, and that's the stage I'm doing here. This is just going through and hitting the big panels with a little bit of a white. This will help accent that two-tone look. Now for the main painting of it, the idea here is to kind of go back and forth in multiple layers. I'm not going real heavy each coat, just a light, because I'm going to come at all four angles and slowly but surely layer it. That way I don't mess up any of this detail I've done underside. The reason I start on the bottom is, number one, it's not going to be seen, and it's also a good way to practice. Environment does play a factor on this with the paint, if it's hot, if it's cold, high humidity or low, so that's this process. Now it's a process of painting the camo patterns. You can see here when the angles are really highlighted two-tone panel lines that I created with the primer. Uh, I'm using a black flame airbrush here, and the idea is to get as close to the model as possible with a lower PSI and a light amount of paint to create a real tight line. This border black flame really does a nice job of that. I'm really impressed with its abilities. Continuing on with the patterns, once again, like I said, you can see the panel lines I created with the underside. Just a very time-consuming process. Getting all the brown on. There's a lot of different angles on this model, so it definitely took a little bit of time to get that done. Once the brown was done, it was coming back and doing the black. Here you can kind of see the finished product. I've also hit it with a gloss clear acrylic, and now I'm going to install all my decals. There are not a lot of decals on this, but definitely enough. You can also see I did the tracks. I've done videos on the track detail. That's a different video you can watch on the process of how I do my tracks to make them look dirty. Uh, but you can see it there. Once this is all done, I'm going to come back and weather it and add that effect. So after the decals dried, I hit it with a flat acrylic clear to seal everything, and then I'm starting the weathering process. Here I'm using oil paints and putting multiple drops, and then I'm taking oil thinner and I'm just pulling it down to create the streak effect. This is a fun process. It's one of those I've always said, less is best. You don't want to put a lot of this. You can always add on and build up different layers, but it definitely adds a lot to the model. It does create a glossiness, so you will have to redo a second flat coat to seal everything. The important part here is to make sure that, like, especially when you've done your decals, you want to seal those underneath an acrylic so that you don't damage them or mess them up in this process. I do the whole vehicle, really create a nice weathered oxidation look, a little bit of rust in the red, and then the whites that, like I said, they're really good oxidation. What I love about the German vehicles is the white really does jump out on the black paint. Definitely creates a nice effect. Here, once again, just a little minor drops and then adding a little bit areas I want to create more of that effect. Uh, but that's basically the process. And then you can take a dry brush and come back and kind of pick up some of the overpaint if you've done a little bit too much in certain areas. Really, really simple process. You can always come back once it dries and use your thinner and reactivate the paint. Basically, it'll start melting it again, and then you can fix it accordingly. Next, I'm going to be using my colored chalks. This whole front end rusted plate that sits on the ground has been done with that effect. Just taking multiple colors and using a Q-tip and then just building up the different shadings. When you look at a real one, kind of look at how the colors fan out and the paint's worn off, and then the rust starts building up in the paint areas that get more wear and tear. And then it's just a matter of going about that. The one thing to remember here is when you go to seal it, it will dilute some of your colors. So you want to make it a little richer than actually you want it, because the sealing effect does dilute, like I said, quite a bit. But it's a neat effect, all done very gently and slowly. You can use different types of brushes for different effects of the chalk. Stiff bristles and real soft ones. The Q-tips work good. You can see here I'm using different tools to kind of accent different things. The other product I'm using is Tamiya's product. This one I want to get a little more liberal. This is creating more of the dust effect inside the road wheels. It's kind of a trial and error process learning this one. The one good thing is that if you make a mistake, you can take your Q-tip, get it wet, and you can wash a lot of this out before you actually seal it. Don't use a thinner, because that will actually melt it and it'll set it in a lot more. From there, I'm using a wash and then just kind of doing some highlighting on the bolts and different details to accent it there. What I like to do is the wash and the chalk at the same time because they kind of accent each other and help each other adhere. Also giving it a real liberal underside coating to really accent the effect, different little things. Once it's complete, I'll show you a lot more of the details, but this was a real fun model. Once again, like I said, Werk did a outstanding job of taking the Dragon model and upgrading it to a more realistic model, fixing it. Some parts I did have to figure out. They weren't all covered in all the manuals. But the really neat thing is as I was building this, I was showing my progress on my Facebook page, and I had several different soldiers that actually crewed this pipe in and give me some information, which helped me kind of figure out stuff and add the details that it really did have. It did finish out to be a really nice model. I was really happy with it. It's a big model. It's a heavy model. There's a lot to it, uh, but it definitely was worth the effort. Highly recommend this model for anybody who wants to build it. I definitely enjoyed it. So once I took all those effects, I sealed them in with a clear, and then once again a clear flat, and then here I'm doing a light dusting effect. What I'm using is buff that's watered down, about 20 to 30% buff to me, a paint acrylic, and the thinner, and I'm just giving it a light dusting. This kind of balances everything out. I find it to be an accurate effect. Uh, the moisture in it kind of helps mix everything. The buff kind of settles in all the low points and creates that realistic effect. It definitely highlights all the details. Something I do on most of the time when I'm doing this. And you can use other shades depending on what you're looking for. I just think the buff is one of the best colors for that. Last thing I'm going to do here, a little bit more of the wash, but here what I'm doing is I'm using it after I did the flat. Now the reason I'm doing that is I want to create that greased area that's shiny. So all the points where you might see some grease and that I'm using the black wash to color that effect. The other thing I'm going to do is take my gloss clear and I'm going to paint it over all the shiny areas, the lenses, things like that, because those would naturally be shiny. Here are your fuel access points. For fueling, you're always going to have some kind of grime there. And then some places underneath here you really can't see around the engine block area. Just looking at real pictures where sometimes you'll get that grease effect. Like I said, once again, creating that really good oil, like they spilled fuel. Diesel's oily, so it's going to be shining like that. That's the effect I'm trying to simulate here. Yeah, putting back the piston here real quick, always slips out, and then coming back and, as I said before, painting a clear over the lenses to finish off that effect. A lot of people I'll notice miss this step and you'll see all this flat and then the lenses are flat and it just looks fake, where this shiny effect makes it look like that. If you want to create the road wear look like you've been driving in the winter and you'll get that windshield wiper effect, what you can do here is tape over the areas that you want to stay shiny, and then when you paint your flat over like let's say a windshield, it'll create that natural haze look. It's a really simple way to create that effect without too much muss or fuss. The nice thing about the acrylic is if you accidentally mess up, a lot of times you can take a wood toothpick after it dries and it scrapes right off without damaging the material. Here you can't really see it, but the beak So let's look at the finished result. You can see the different lettering and details, the etching along here, the weathering on the sides, the dust and all that on the underside, and the road wheels, the tracks. Working my way around, just kind of how the vehicle itself lays out, the marker, the different cabling I added here for the beacon light. This is something that I was told is removed before they actually elevate the bridge, because it'll break, but it goes through in a connection process here and then over. I took the rear view mirrors, and what I did is I used wire because I'm notorious for breaking them, and so they're a lot more stiff now. Looking at the underside, different parts, once again you can see the sides, the weathering and all that. Going around on the back side, looking at the inside workings here. Here I use yarn for these cables here. Here's these cables that help elevate it, the different mechanisms in there. You can really see the convoy marking here, the different track dust and the different brake lights and road wheel processes here. Here you can see something which I found out, there's a log. Now what I found out is they use that when they're setting the bridge down so that they can actually pick it up in the mud. They'll also have some rope up here. That's something they always end up carrying around. That's one of the things that the folks that actually crewed this were explaining to me they do. Here, taking a better look with the bridge removed, you can see, as I said, the section of rope, the two logs. I also tied down some netting here for camouflage, and they always carried that around. You have the different vent systems here, the canopy and cab, all those parts. Kind of looking around at the different details here. Once again, it ended up working out to be a really nice model. Here, taking a look at the bridge, what I added was the cables that go here for the hydraulic system that functions on the bridge. There's a bunch of cables that are inside here. I created these attachment points here and here that it actually has. The other thing the model only had was, it basically had one side of the mounting device. The opposite side didn't have it, so I recreated what was on one side on the other and made sure it looks identical, because that's how it really is. There's also a bar here I added in, which the model didn't have. You can see some of the cabling that was added up in here, the different hydraulic systems and that. So both sides are identical. Let's look at the underside. Like I said, you're not going to see most of this, but here's kind of that weathering look, the dust, that kind of that grimy, dirty look you'd see under here. The actual bridge, these are all wishbones. They're not the solid piece. I could have, gone through in that, but I'm never going to see it, so I didn't want to take the time. But that would be something, if you were going to work on authenticity, you would want to fix all that and make it look more realistic. So that's the Das Werk's M48 bridging unit in what's technically a West German era model. This vehicle was back prior to unification, so it was part of West Germany. It was used extensively, a very effective vehicle. It was eventually replaced with the Leopard 1 bridge unit, which eventually was phased out for the Leopard 2 bridge unit. They had quite a few in service. I don't know the exact amount. I've heard different numbers, but they had a lot of them back then because of the size of the West German military. Anyway, thank you for watching. It was a fun model. I definitely recommend it. As I said, a lot can be done with it. It's enjoyable. It goes together great. The fun part was all the different things that you can really drive into and weather up in detail. For those that really get into doing that, this is a great model for that. It would also really be nice for a diorama. It would be a big diorama, but you definitely can do something great with it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Take care, everybody. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.